Hi everyone, welcome back to Java 1 for All. In this video, we are going to run the MySQL container, and for that, we are going to use something called Docker Compose. So there are different ways you could run just a terminal command and have everything running, but the problem is it's quite difficult to remember. So if you have the Docker Compose file, it's easier to start because the command to run is pretty short. So how do we create this file? First, right-click in the project. And then the file that we are going to use must be called docker-compose, and the extension will be YML or YAML. So YAML is just a style for configuration properties files that is based on Python. If you're not familiar with Python, you have to be careful because what we are going to do here, it's like very precise. Each space may have your entire file invalid. So be careful when you are typing. If you have any problems, just go to branch 253 because 252 was the previous video. There was no git to commit, and copy the entire file. So what are we going to do? First thing, we are going to start the Docker Compose file. They have like a pattern. You could go to the Docker documentation, but I remember because it's pretty easy. First, we start with version. You have kind of two branches. One, that's the 2 branch, and the 3 branch. The branch 2, that's more used in situations like what we have now without running in a cluster or without having to be managed by a swarm. In this case, the branch 2 dot something is the commonly used. But if you are going to run like different in different machines or different, let's say, more than one container and you need something to be managed, you would use the branch 3. I think the latest is 3.8 at the moment I'm recording this video. So 2.4, now that we have the version, we have to use the word services, and then you can see here that IntelliJ is helping a lot. When I press enter, this is the place where I should start writing again. If I start writing here, it's wrong. If I start writing here, it's wrong. It should be exactly like here. Now I will use the name services, and then I could give any name. I'm going to give DB from databases, and then as you can see, I press enter and I am under the, in between the B and the column. Now, image, what's the image that we want? We want to create containers from for MySQL, and the containers are created from an image. This image is coming from hub.docker.com. So for example, they even have the example we need here, MySQL. So I have different type of images. We have for the MySQL community, we have for the enterprise edition, we have MariaDB, Percona. So you have millions and millions of images, and you have to be careful because some images may not be reliable. So you have MySQL, you could have like Oracle, or you could have SQL Server. You could have Postgres. So you have different types of databases and you have different types of containers that can be created. In this case, we are going to start with MySQL. If you go over the description, you will get some documentation. These are the versions supported. In our case, we are going to use the latest. So here at my image, I would just say MySQL, but I'm not going to use the version. If I wanted to use the version, I would just use a column, and I think they have an example here. Yeah, they don't say anywhere, but yeah, it should be something like this. You then use the tag, and the tag should be one of these. In our case, I just want to use the latest, so I'm not going to add anything. I think here you have all the tags. Okay, so going back, now that we have the image, I will give a name to the container. So container underscore name. I'm going to call this MySQL too. So the container name could be something completely different. It could be MySQL DevDojo, for example. But I'm just going to use the name MySQL. And then we have this environment. So basically the environment is something that you want to pass to your container, and your container will execute. In our case, MySQL is expecting some environment variables, the same way we did with Java Home. That's called MySQL root password. So if you scroll down here, you will see that we have this option. Basically, we are just going to give the root password to access our database. So coming back, and remember, the order, the indentation is extremely important. MySQL root password, and I'm going to write root. Okay, now I'm coming back to the same level as E from environment, and then I will type here ports, and here I will tell the port that the container will receive data and the port that our computer will send to that basically container. So the map from the container port to my computer port, because remember the container is running in a Docker engine, so it's like they have a completely separate environment. We are reusing some resources, but they have their own network, they have their own processes, so it's completely different. In our case, I want to be able to map because I want my computer to be able to communicate with the image, the container in that the Docker engine. So basically, I have to say, hey, the container, I would like to have the MySQL running at port 3306. By default, this is the port that MySQL will always run. So unless you change that, I want to run on 3306. And then what's the port in your computer, on your Windows? The port on my Windows will be 3306. So for example, when I access localhost 3306, it's going to forward to 3306 inside my container. Now, let's say that you have something running on port 3306. You cannot use this again. So for example, you can change here to 3307. So when you access localhost 3307, it's going to forward to the container 3306. In my case, I don't have anything else running, so I will just go with 3306. And then the same level as the P imports something called volumes. Now, remember, the container is something that we can start, we can stop, we can remove, but usually the data we would like to keep. So the data we are going to create separately from the container. So I will give a name here, for example, DevDojo one for all data. And then I want the data to be mapped to var. This is inside of the container. You can find this in the documentation from MySQL. And now here I just have to say that I have these volumes available. Cool. So we have the Docker Compose. We could have several services. We only have one, but we could have like any number of services running through this Docker Compose. And how do we get started? Just come here to the terminal, and then you can check if you have any container running. Docker PS. As you can see, there are no containers running at the moment. You can check a Docker PS space -a as like all, and you will see there are no containers stopped either. So I'm going to clear. Now I want to start. So Docker -compose up. In my case, since I was recording previously in Portuguese, I already have all the images, but probably right now you are seeing downloading, and after all the downloads are made, your container will get started. So as you can see, this is the container running. I think if you come here, I usually don't come here, but probably they will show here. We have this Java one for all. That's basically, it gets the name of the project. And you have the MySQL running on port 3306. Cool. So now I will come back here to a new session and I will type again Docker yes. So as you can see, now we have one container running. The image is MySQL. It was created 40 seconds ago, and status is up for 39 seconds. Now, how do I stop? Basically, just Control C, and then you've stopped the container. You can come back here, and you can type Docker PS again. So there are no containers running, but if you type Docker PS and then -A, you have one container. As you can see, the container is stopped, so the container exists. What you can do is run Docker if you want to remove -compose down, and it will remove all the containers created inside this, not inside, but from this file docker-compose. So I'm removing the container MySQL, and now if I run again Docker PSA, there are no more containers, but I still have the volume. So if I type Docker volume ls, you can see that I have two volumes, one that I'm using for the Portuguese course, and one, the one we created, that's for the project Java 1 for All. So every time you start your application, make sure that you have your container either stopped or running, because sometimes you do something like this. You do Docker compose up, and then it's like, yeah, your container now is running, and then you kind of close. And you may be thinking, okay, looks like I don't have anything else running. But if you open the terminal and you type Docker, probably is a bit small, but just to show you, Docker PS, you can see the container is running. So if you come here to the Docker as well, you will see that you still have the container running. And then if you open the application again, and you come to the terminal, looks like there are no containers running. And if you try to run docker-compose up again, you will see that it's kind of like it's getting started, but it just attached. So how can you stop? You can either just press Control C, or maybe there is a way to stop here, and you can also delete, or you just run docker compose down. And remember, the docker compose down, it's being executed like this because we are inside the same context. So we do have, if you type dir, you do have the docker compose file here. Yeah, I think that's everything. If you want to run, if you don't want to see in the terminal, you can run docker-compose up, and then I think it's -d, and it will run as in the background. So you will get your terminal free to be used again. Then Docker PS, you still have it running, and then docker-compose down. And we are stopping and removing MySQL. So for this video, that's it. Again, if you have any problems, if you do have like one wrong space, sometimes like this, and you try to run docker-compose up, you get some errors. So please, if you have any errors, just copy from branch 253. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.